Hello, and welcome to the Weekly Scroll Podcast. My name is Ryan.
And I'm an untamed homunculus.
And with us today, we have a special guest. This is Josh of Rise Up Comus. How are you doing today, Josh?
Doing good, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming.
Of course, absolutely. I've been so excited about what we're going to talk about today for so long because I've been just seeing it on Twitter for so long, and I'm sure we'll talk about that as well. But for those that may not know, who the heck are you, and what are we talking about today?
Well, I'm really just an up-jumped blogger, but I have a game coming out next year called His Majesty the Worm. It is a game about, it's a one man's testament to his own folly. It's about megadungeon exploration game with a focus on the human elements. It has tarot cards as the randomizing element, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like I've been seeing something about His Majesty the Worm for as long as I've been on Twitter, and I know it hasn't been that long, but how long has this been in the works, and have you been talking about it? Because I know I've been seeing it on Twitter a bunch, and I've downloaded the appendices a lot, but I just recently actually got to the blog and realized I have so much to read, which makes me very happy. But how long has this kind of been in the works?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people that are in the TTRPG space, this isn't my day job, which is, I'm sure my boss would be very mad that I'm on a podcast during my day job to talk about it. But, please don't. This is just like, this is my hobby project, my passion project. And these things have a long tail. Actually printing words on paper is difficult, time-consuming, expensive. So I've been at this for a little while. I started writing the game 7 years ago or so, just like hammering away 8 hours a week on Sundays. I've been yelling about it for a while because it is itch funded. I'm not going through Kickstarter for funding. So what I did was to kind of get people interested and see if this had any traction and see if we could like raise funds for all the things that I know that I cannot do, layout and art and editing and things like that. I put chapters of the book as they were coming out with some pretty simple layout and some public domain images on itch. And most of them are free, or you could get them free if you signed up from a mailing list or had a pay what you will. And people were kind enough to come through, throw me $5 or $10, and using that method, I paid everybody that worked on the book to contribute stuff. So it's taken a little while because I had this kind of like long form method of crowdfunding, but it's kind of finally coming out. So it's coming out next year in Q1 from Exalted Funeral.
Nice, very cool.
Yeah.
Cool method.
So I guess the question is why? Was it like what made you want to do that? Was it just so you could put stuff out as you worked, or was there a specific reason you didn't want to go to something like Kickstarter as someone who hasn't put out like a ton of stuff already? Was that like a factor that played into it, or was it just about putting out the appendices?
Yeah, I think Kickstarter is terrifying and is very scary as a space, and is a tremendous amount of work. And I like writing games. I'm here to write and play games that I enjoy with my friends. It is, like I said, a hobby, and it's something I don't want to like lose that joy about, right? Kickstarter, I have some feelings about it, especially as like larger, more successful and established companies essentially just use it for like fulfillment. They put out essentially like a 99% finished project, and they're like, oh, please back us, which is, not, competing with companies like that is very intimidating for a guy with not a lot of things out right now, right? So I wanted to do a non-traditional route for a couple reasons, but the main one was just, I'm here for the love of the game.
Yeah. I mean,
Nice.
That's fantastic. Like you said, a lot of bigger companies are really using Kickstarter now as like a pre-order storefront, not
Exactly.
as like I need your investment to make this thing happen. And that's shitty, but Kickstarter's making money, so they don't give a shit.
Yeah, I don't care.
So to each their own. But this is great. Like these are the kind of projects that we definitely love to find. And the first time I read through the first appendice I read was, or the appendix I read was the sword is sorcery is a sword without a hilt.
Mm.
Like, just, it's so good. And when you get through all the rest of it, I guess, God, there's so many questions. So to start, it seems like a very like table heavy and procedure heavy but rules light system. Was that the intention all along, to have people, I know there's anti-canon aspects to it, to have it be kind of like a build your own and then go with it? Or what was and if so, like, what was the impetus to like choose that kind of path forward?
So is the question like, I want to make sure that I'm answering it right.
Let me say it in the way my brain works. So it's not an OSR game. It's definitely a very, you describe it as like a new school with old school sensibilities game. It uses tarot. It uses a ton of roll tables. You build out your own mega dungeon as you go. What made you want to go that route, as opposed to kind of like the standard OSR and or D&D light game?
Yeah. Okay. Got it. I love the OSR. Like I said, I'm an upjump blogger, and I got into blogging, just when it stopped being cool. I was kind of there for the last gasp of G+, which is, I think most people in this audience probably are deep enough in the nerd lore to get it. But, when, there's the social media platform that fueled this RPG movement in the like the teens and aughts, and I was there just in time to see it die. And I was like, oh, these people are talking about the coolest stuff. Everybody was so inventive, and they were sharing their content, which was, it blew my mind. I thought it was so much more creative stuff than everything at my game table. And I played RPGs forever. And these guys were having the experience that I wanted to have, and I really was getting fired up by their big ideas. So I started a blog, and it was throwing little things out there to be part of this community of people that had an idea, committed it to paper, and somebody else took the idea and ran with it, and somebody else took that idea and ran with it. And there was these iterative processes, as you can see the layers of strata as like things moved and were passed around blogs. So like I started playing OSR games at that point. But when I was writing my own system, I was making the game that I wanted to make with my friends. And I certainly can and do play OSR games, but I'm also always tinkering with mechanics. I think they're interesting. I like game mechanics. I like thinking about them and playing with them. And I like to play different games because of them. The mechanics of a game have a different texture, have a different grip. It feels different to just to run through different procedures. If you are in D&D and you're making a roll to attack and a roll for damage, that feels different than an Into the Odd game where you're not rolling to attack, you're just rolling damage, and that feels different than a World of Darkness game where you're rolling attack and damage and defense and armor. Like, all those things have a different texture at the table, so I'm interested in that. So I wanted to play with the game that I was like kind of just had in my head. And I've always done that. I've made games for my friends, so that when we I've just been blessed with a real indulgent, extremely kind friend group who are like, yeah, we'll play your little Heartbreaker, and oh yeah, it's just like a yeah, it's very indulgent. Yeah. And then, after I'd like made this game, I was like, what does it take to show somebody that's not just my friend, right? Like, how do I show somebody that's not sitting at the table with me? And what do I need to write down so that they can play it too without me hovering over their shoulder and explaining it to them? It's like, oh no, I see why you said that, but actually you can't do that. And it's like, what do I need to do that? So this was my attempt to do that.
I mean, damn, I can tell you right now, just based on the appendix, you did a really good fucking job. I mean,
thank you very much.
So why tarot?
Okay, so the top level is in the, I was talking about how I think mechanics are cool. I think card game, and then there's and I'm not exaggerating when I say there's hundreds of games that use cards as a randomizer, as kind of their main dice alternative out there, and I think cards are really cool. I like them because they are persistent. You can have hands of cards. They will stay on the table. If you put a card down, everybody can like reference that card. They have a gaminess to them because you can draw 3, put back 2, play from the top of the deck, the bottom of the deck, reorder parts of the deck. They're informationally rich, especially tarot cards. You know, they have suit, they have number, they have direction on the table. So there's a lot of stuff there to play with. And, you know, I could have made a playing card game. Playing cards are 25 cents at your Kroger. But tarot cards look kind of metal and they look kind of badass and they have this like arcane feeling to them. And I don't use them for anything else but gaming, but I think they're cooler to look at. They're more interesting in my hand. So I just was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, tarot is what I'm going to go with this time.
Hard agree. There's something just so much more magical about like, I mean, because I have a few playing card, like role playing games. And then I think I have another that's tarot based. And it's like, yeah, pulling the tarot cards out feels a lot more magical, you know?
Yeah, I wanted that experience that my mom forbade me from playing D&D for, right? Like in the 80s, she was like, no, you can't play D&D. And now I'm like, yeah, because it looks like this. Because like,
yeah.
No. Really leaning into that.
I remember as a kid, like just thinking tarot cards were really cool and asking my parents if I could get a set, and then like having to go talk to my pastor about why I'm not allowed to have a deck of tarot cards, and now I have like 10. So yeah, exactly. You know, thanks mom and dad. Yeah, I mean it's really interesting the way that they're used in all the different appendixes as a generative tool. They're not, because so from everything I've read so far, I've seen hints of like what combat is like. Maybe in the blog post that I haven't got to yet, there's a little bit more talking about that. So I don't know if they're more built into the mechanics that way. But from what I've read through the appendixes, a lot of the like dungeon building aspects are really like you can literally flip a card and be like, guess what? That's where you're at now. Or especially in like the magical ones and stuff as well. Like the tarot are so associated with pretty much everything that you can do to build a procedure and stuff like that. So was it difficult to take that, or did you kind of take the numbers, like major arcana, minor arcana, suit numbers, and went, okay, I have this many numbers to work with, this is how I'm going to incorporate it? Like, what was your kind of process for choosing how to use the tarot into the various procedures?
Yeah, good question. I think so. I mean, really, in a very, very basic way, the cards are just a randomizer, and I think they have some like additional gaminess that I mentioned. You know, that come up in different rules, especially combat. But really, and there's a sidebar that explains if you don't have a tarot deck and you just have some playing cards, you can do it in a pinch. I think some people are interested in tarot games because they are interested in tarot reading, and they think that the tarot reading aspect is an important part of gameplay, and it's really not. It's and you know, I still hope that they want to play the game and stuff, but like that is not the intention of having the tarot deck. You know, really, it's just a randomizer. But because the randomizer is persistent, you know, you can, in the same way that, I mean, dungeon stocking procedures, what comes next in the dungeon is as old as D&D itself, because your little randomizer is not just looking up tables and rolling and writing down what you see. You can lay them out. Like, it has like this additional fun element. I think that there's a kind of like play that really thrives with dungeon crawling, and that requires some upfront work and then the end of that work for a GM. So when it comes to building a dungeon, I think that it takes a couple Sundays of work. That's how I made the dungeon that I ran for 5 years uninterrupted play. A couple Sundays of like thinking, what's in this dungeon? What do I need to put there? What's interesting? What are interesting challenges? What makes for a fun game? And I wrote all that stuff down, all that stuff that was in my head about what I think is fun. I put down on paper. And if you do that for, a couple Sundays and you have a answer these like series of questions, 20 questions, play 20 questions with yourself, and you can make a pretty decently sized dungeon. and then your work is done. You know, I think that there are some games that thrive on like, what are my players going to get up to this week? Oh, well, last week they did this, and now I need to plan for this, and I'll stat this encounter, and I'll build my encounter. But oh, there's some bollywogs will be over here. But like once you know what's in the dungeon, it's in a real space. You don't have to prep ever again. You just have to front load that work. So that's what the tarot cards were doing in that section for me, right? Like it was letting you kind of get that work out of the way and like think through what a fun dungeon looks like. But I mean, they're used in all sorts of things. Every mechanic has the tarot cards integrated in them in some way because there's no other randomizer on the table.
I like that you really like drive home that uses a randomizer all the way through, even to like beyond just play, but like prep itself. I was reading through the building the mega dungeon or dungeon seeds, and I really enjoyed like the concept in your approach to this like thematic and like use space, this like space that has a logic internally to it. I really appreciate it all the way through. It was cool to see.
Yeah, cheers. I think that a blank page when you're prepping for a game is very intimidating.
Yeah.
If you have a book that has some prompts, some randomizers, like some of my best work has, as a GM, I think my most interesting challenges, dungeons, encounters have been because I had a random table that I committed to using. I like this table. This is good. And then like something that I wouldn't have come up with myself came out of those results. And I'm like, well, how does this work? And the answer of like fighting through my initial like, wait, I don't get it. The answer when I fought through that is better than the stuff I could have come up myself. So that's what I wanted to provide would-be GMs and players like, and not all tables that you see for RPGs on the internet are particularly interesting. 1d20 dungeon dressings, and it's like table, chair, candle, box, sack, brown sack. Like those things are a dime a dozen, and probably creative exercises to like kind of like bang out, but not very useful to me at the table. So getting some random tables out there that are interesting and generate cool results and are actually fun to like play with after you put them all together was important to me.
Do you see like, so I mean, this might be a two-part question. First off, do you think about people themselves releasing like third-party content for this? And part two, like, where do you see that sliding in? Because I could definitely see people making their own like Dungeon Seeds book that has their own like generation stuff. Yeah.
The first page of the end papers is a big bold text that says, except for the art, which I don't have the rights to reprint, please repurpose and use everything in this book. Print it at Kinko's. Make copies for your friends. Unless you are like just selling it on the street corner, even then, how mad could I be, right? If you were just like printing new copies and like selling them on the street corner, like the pirate DVD guys, how mad would I be if someone was actually doing that to my game? Please use the game however you want. Please put out third-party content, and once the game is out, something that I'm trying to generate right now while the game is going through fulfillment are tools to do that. I want to make this as easy as possible. I want to talk to you about it if you're interested in it. I want to like play test it with you. I want to edit it for you. I want to give you an InDesign file with all the styles set up so that you can like just plop your content in and publish it. And I want you to make as much money or as little money, whatever you feel comfortable with. I'd love to play this game with other people. That'd be really, really cool to me.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's funny because on I think at least two, is it 3 of the 4? I think at least 2 of the 3 of the 4. The beginning part literally says copyright is a joke, like permission is granted to do whatever. It's like AI stealing all our shit anyway, so I mean,
I came out of this, like I said, the OSR movement in the blogs were just like the most powerful ideas I've ever seen, getting passed around and getting better for it. And if I could possibly contribute to that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. it's like I said. I mean, just the okay. So, question. My brain almost went in a different direction. I don't want it to. Why His Majesty the Worm? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, it's an illusion. It's a literary illusion. There's an Italo Calvino book called The Castle Across Destinies. And in that book, the premise of the book, that there's these pilgrims traveling through a wood, kind of like the Canterbury Tales maybe. And they find that they can't speak. So they take a tarot deck and they tell each other stories, their backstories, by laying out the cards in these certain patterns. Because, the game has tarot cards, I thought it was a kind of an apt illusion. And it's from a quote from there where the king is being led by his jester into a graveyard, and the jester points towards an empty grave and says, "Here a majesty reigns greater than yours, His Majesty the Worm." And I thought it was so evocative and cool. I pulled it out immediately and put it on my Word document.
Yeah. No, it really
Very
is.
cool.
It's a title that you feel has so much more in it than just 4 words. Like, every time I've seen it, I'm like, what is this? But it feels so, I don't know, like almost esoteric or something. There's some like medieval aspect to it that just, I don't know. It's definitely intriguing, and like you said, it's very evocative. And it's a great title, and the logo is great as well. It's just all around, just good job. I don't even know what else to say sometimes. It's just so good.
Thanks. I mean, again, I can only take credit for so much. I think that a lot of the design work Pete Borlis, my graphic designer, did to make this thing look good. The logo itself is a piece of public domain art. It's in the frontispiece of John Bauer was a turn of the last century Norwegian painter, and in the frontispiece of his book that I have, he has this little like worm logo, and I fell in love with it as soon as I saw it, kind of the same way that I fell in love with the title from the Calvino book. I just pulled it out and I was like, this is worth keeping.
So as far as, I mean, like I said, there's so much of all 4 of these appendixes that are out right now, the appendices that are out right now are, I don't want to say rolled, but they're tables or lists or just like a lot. That is a lot of very creative, very good writing. And is that what like has taken a lot of the bulk of the 7 years, or like what's your process for sitting down and being like, I need to come up with these like crazy, awesome, like maleficence of the wastes? Because like my brain goes, all right, I need to sit down and write dark stuff for my dark thing, and I went, blood, okay, so I'm stuck now. You know what I mean? Like, what, like, do you just like read a lot of stuff and you're just like, oh, that's cool, let me take that? Or do you just sit down and like try to get the mindset, or like, what's the process for coming up with, I mean, because if the book is as big as you say it is, these appendixes are scratching the surface of it, and there's still so much in them.
Yeah, great question. So, one, I'll just say up front, yeah, I think reading and regurgitating is all art is. But my process for like writing this stuff was, I wrote a vast bulk of it I started the book when I was at a job that I was bored at, and I just wrote like all day, every day. I was like, well, nothing else to do. I have a word processor and free time. And then there was there was the question. I was like, how do I get stuff out of my head and onto paper in a way that somebody else besides me and my friends can use? So trying to like think through that, right? Like, what are the things that I do at the table that are just, the assumptions that I have, and how do I make those into like kind of like knowns and raise those as subject matter to be talked about, whether they're, how sorcery should interact with the world, or how you build a dungeon or whatever. And I tried to like think through that and put it onto paper. So I had just like, my notes document was just like a bunch of kind of unrelated essays about how I run games and how you should run games if you wanted to run them like me. I don't know if you do, but if you did. And then I turned all of that over to my editor, another person that I think deserves a lot of credit, Melody Watson. She did a fantastic job. And, as somebody that wasn't in my head, she really helped me figure out like, okay, this came out of nowhere for me. I didn't I got to the end of it and now I get it, but like we need to introduce these things in a different way. These are unrelated essays. So that was, you know, the hard work of taking all that stuff and putting it into a format that is digestible, easy to search, easy to understand what's all in it, where you want to go and how do you get there. But it was really important to me to put out a full game. And I think you can have a full game on an index card. I think you can have a full game on a 1-page PDF. But if I'm selling like the snake oil, right, that mega dungeons are fun. And that's a hard sell. I think a lot of people have bounced off of them. I think some people have had bad experiences. If I'm going to sell that snake oil, I need to like really put out everything that you need to do it. So, you know, you could have had this, and I in my first days of writing this, I really thought this was going to be multi-books, kind of bind them together, sell them together in a box set. But it was practically, it was unfeasible for like printing reasons. The MSRP of that was like $200, and I didn't want to make an unachievable book. So by binding them all together, it's really like multiple books, right? The GM's book, the player's book, a sample adventure, like magical subsystems that you can play with, a bestiary, everything that you would want from a kind of like robust system. And it was just the lowest price point that I could sell it to you for was if I put them all into the same book.
We appreciate that, honestly. Yeah, very, very humane of you.
Very nice. I would have bought it regardless, but like,
yeah,
yes,
Ryan would have bought it regardless, but
yeah.
I appreciate it then.
Yeah. So playing the game, I know you just said you're talking about snake oil and mega dungeons and stuff. Like what? So I'm definitely one of those people that have bounced off mega dungeons. I have some. They're great to read, but as far as like playing in the mega dungeon, like what about it like makes you want to play that game? And like you know you talked already about like giving people the tools so that they can play it as well, but like what is the impetus to make that the style of this whole game?
Yeah, mega dungeons were my white whale forever. You know, I think my first mega dungeon experience, well, I had a lot of campaigns that were like, oh cool, this is Undermountain and the DM has like 500 maps and I know that there's 1,000 rooms, I can see them, and the campaign lasted one session and we quit. I mean, so many games.
Classic.
Like, yeah. I mean, that's the real dragon to slay is scheduling conflict.
Yeah.
But mega dungeons was my white whale forever. It was like the core of the fantasy role-playing experience that I like had this vision about ever since I started playing when I was 12. And it's difficult to pull off, but there's something really captivating there, both like in the themes of just this, you know, in the OSR they call it this mythic underworld, this space that is magical, inimical to human life, you know, mythological. There's something that's just appealing that I just like. I mean, I don't know why I like the color green. I don't know why I like mega dungeons, but when it comes to playing them, there's something that is, I think, really fun there. And there's a persistence in the gaming world that comes about going back to the same place and having an adventure location that is big enough, robust enough that can withstand this. You know, it's not a dungeon that you clear after a couple sessions and then leave and never think about it again. It's a dungeon that I know what it is. If you guys played Metroidvania games where you are, and you like, you know, you're exploring and you see a door on a ledge and you don't have a way to get up there and you're like, I'm gonna have to come back.
You haven't unlocked double jump yet, so you have to go back to the other place.
Totally. Or a number of other things. There's like a mega dungeon is a space where you aren't just going through, kicking down doors and leaving forever. You're going through and you're like, I don't know what to do about this door yet. And that's okay, because there's a million doors this other way. And then, you know, a couple sessions later, you're like, wait a minute, I've seen this symbol before. And you have this aha moment. And you're like, okay, well, this symbol could be opened by this key that we got, you know, and I haven't seen it for 5 sessions, 5 months. and like, let's go backtrack. And there's like these aha moments where you're like uncovering new things through the dungeon, and it changes because of the things you did. You started the fire that like swept through rooms 131 through 163, and now those are like charred husk, and you defeated the lich from level 1, and now level 1 is safe, and you can like start a little bit lower next time. And like, you see these people that have played with me for a couple of years, and they have this memory, they have these memories from play, and new players are coming in and they're like, okay, when we're going through this room, the thing that you're gonna have to remember is like, we can't speak out loud there because there's bats with sonar and they can hear you. But like, if you're totally silent, and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't. And like, there's these like generations of players that have learned and explored and conquered this dungeon. I think that is so satisfying, both as a player and a GM. It really, really is gratifying to watch these things happen to this thing that I just made, like, over the course of a couple weeks of like writing down ideas and stealing dungeons that I liked and cobbling them together with Scotch tape.
Man, I'm trying to come play at your table.
Come on over, man.
Yeah, I'll just fly over.
Well, if you guys want to, I would be more than happy on the podcast or off to, run some, like a one shot.
Oh yeah, that's a hard 100%. Yes here. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. No, here's the thing. I'm very excited to talk with you about this, but I can tell you right now, like, the week this game comes out, unless we can somehow get it before, is the week that we're going to be reviewing it here on the stream. So I would also love to play it at some point. That would be fantastic. But that is what's going to be happening here. Couple of questions. One, in chat, Ozo asked, like, what is your favorite tarot deck? And I think this is back from our tarot conversation, but I want to make sure I get to that. Do you have are you a Rider-Waite guy, or do you have just like a random deck that you like, or what?
Yeah, great question. So I have lots of decks at this point, just because I didn't say I'm going to write a tarot game because I didn't like the tarot. So I have a couple different tarot decks. I think they're interesting and kind of cool to look at. In terms of like beauty, I'm going to look up the guy's name so I don't. Dungeon Solitaire. There was a game I bought called Dungeon Solitaire, and it's played with by Matthew Lowe's. It is a solo game, and you play it with a tarot deck. I think it is a very gorgeous deck. When I am playing at the table, I use a Rider-Waite deck because I am familiar enough with it that I can recognize the cards at a distance. So there is like a little bit of a learning curve, I think, to tarot if you aren't super familiar with it and you're just getting started because you think the game sounds interesting. I mean, I have had some players at my table that like, hold on, what is this one? And like, oh, that's the page. And like, it just takes like a second, right? Like, it's not hard. Yeah. But like, there's like a half second mismatch between like seeing a thing and then being like, got it. And because I'm so familiar with the Rider-Waite deck, I can look at it at a distance. Somebody pulls a card from the other side, shows it to me. I don't have to like, and as evidenced by my glasses, I don't see particularly well. Amazon. So like, I can visualize the cards really, really easily.
Gotcha. And then the other question that's going to end up being like a multi-part question is, so the middle question, to get back to the first question, because this is the way my brain works, like, you talked about this mega dungeon, all these people going with it forever. Like, what makes them want to keep going? And then I wrote that question down and then put an arrow back to another question that was like, okay, so then what's in the Omphalos, the tarot appendix, you say in there that His Majesty the Worm has an anti-canon setting, so city creation rules raise more questions than the answer. So the setting itself is anti-canon, but is there a general lore to the world? Like, is there like specific set of gods? Is the underworld the same, and et cetera, et cetera? Like, what's the general like gist of the game's kind of lore? And then with that, if there's this giant mega dungeon, what keeps people wanting to go into this dungeon as opposed to just being like, never mind, that seems terrible, like, I lost my ear, I'm gonna go home now, All right,
keep me honest, I don't want to drop one of those. Their second two questions will be related, but the first one, there's I think a simple answer. Have you ever like gone to a game and the GM lays these things out and the players brought their little player sheet with them and they're like, well, my character doesn't want to do that, my character likes this stuff and I don't want to do the plot? I think that sucks. And I think that I generally play with players that are like a little bit better than that, but I've seen it, in the course of my life. In His Majesty the Worm, every player character, every adventurer has a reason that they want to go into the mega dungeon that they define at character creation. And no normal people don't want to go into the dungeon. It's bad. They're a monster down there. And like just wanting treasure, man, let me tell you what, there are easier ways to get treasure in the world than like braving traps and fast forward aging beams and Medusas and stuff. Get a farm, buddy. But there's something in the mega dungeon that your character wants, and you and the GM talk about it, and then the GM puts it there, which tell you what, makes it easy for the GM. So like when the players are like coming up with their characters, they're like, well, my brother was turned to stone by a Medusa, and I have to go find a Medusa to get their blood to like smear my brother to unpetrify him. I'm like, that's dope. Room 101 now has a Medusa. It makes my job a lot easier. And so I think it's more fun. His Majesty the Worm shies away from like a lot of collaborative like world building. When I go into Room 101 and the players are like, I kick down the door, I don't say, what do you think is back there? Which I think is a very valid approach in some games. But it's not this game. I think that the mega dungeon shines when I know there's something behind that door, and I know what would happen if you knocked on it, and I know what would happen if you poured water under the door, and I know what would happen if you left it alone, and the players don't. I think that's fun. The joy of discovery from Metroidvanias. But I do think it is really cool when players come up with their ideas for why they're going down there. And once their player achieves their quest, they retire. Unless there's another super compelling quest that has like captured their attention. Another brother fell down a well or whatever.
Gotcha.
But like that collaborative nature keeps the game interesting for me and gets them into the dungeon without complaint,
Well, it's, one of the taglines you have on this is that it's a new school game with old school sensibilities. And it kind of sounds like, and maybe I'm completely off base, but the concepts of kind of the OSR were like some of them at least, where like the world exists, mm-hmm. and it is almost as an eldritch being. It does not care that you exist. It exists and it moves even without you. You are just choosing, and you don't make a story. The players make their own story through their actions and the way they can tell that and everything. And then, which I love that. It's more like a referee. You're just like, this exists here and this is what's happening. You're finding it. I'm not making it up for you. But with this kind of like newer school, like Terra-based procedures and various procedures versus just like a pretty streamlined set of rules or whatever. That's a really, I really like that mashup a lot. Like, it's really interesting to have these completely different system, but to keep those sensibilities, because a lot of people, that's the sensibilities that they like. There are people that, that like 5e and like, being the hero and winning every game and never feeling danger and, and I personally, I'm not a fan of that. So it's really, I'm excited that, that is how this game works, that it's more of it all exists and you are just coming upon it. It's not built for you.
Well, God, it's kind of you to say that that's a nice mix, because I wonder if I haven't shot myself in the foot, right? Like, it's so focused on dungeon crawling and has all these, I think if you have any of the OSR foundational texts, like, the Principia Apocrypha, or I'm dropping the name of it right now, but all the advice there is part of His Majesty's Worm in its blood, in its DNA. And the fact that I just don't have that OSR compatible system that everybody is used to and has their favorite and they can mix and match, but it's a new system and it's weird and you have to buy a Terra deck. It's like, it's too OSR for 5e players and too much of a new game for OSR players. It's the worst of all worlds, loved by nobody, one man's folly, No,
I think you'll be fine. I think that's where we're at in 2023 is the OSR will never die, but I definitely think there's plenty of people that are looking for things that are a little bit different but can still feel familiar. And I think that's what this, at least from what I've read, feels like. So I think you're threading a needle just fine.
Oh, cheers. What was your other question? You had another question. You dropped like three.
So I write them down because I'm never going to remember. So basically, just the general lore of the world. You said that like people have a reason to go in, but like, who are they, and like what could be like a reason for that? Like, are they escaping the Tyrant King or and where are they going?
Yeah, I mean, so in my home games, and this is captured in the book. You know, I say stuff like this in little paragraphs here and there. I think I could have made a generic game. I think I could have, you know, stripped a lot of the lore that exists out of this, and I don't think the game would have been as interesting to read or to look at if I hadn't kind of been running this and just put the stuff that I do into it, and then put some paragraphs right afterwards, like, oh, you can ignore me if you want to. You know, this is just what I do. But like, I think that it would be more interesting if you did what you wanted to do. And some of my players have been like kind enough to include me in their games when they were running it too. And they've had like these science fantasy worlds and, you know, this world where everybody was dead and in hell. So very different stuff than my games. So I you know, stand by what I said, that it's more interesting if you come up with the stuff yourself. But like in the games that I run, and this is reflected in a lot of the kind of like italicized text near a picture, that there's like the city, it has Constantinople vibes, and you can create it randomly if you want to, using the rules in the book. But there's the city. It's the city at the center of the classic world. All the races and civilizations in this world have, like, you know, sprung up and died and like had their ruins subsumed by the next terrible barbarian that becomes glorious civilization as they get to move into the center of the world. And so, you know, it has this place of history. And 5 years ago, a mega dungeon underworld opened underneath it. And exactly what that is, and exactly what the city's constituents are, I think that there are some tables there to encourage you to come up with that answer. But I suspect nobody is going to have exactly the right configuration that was mine. But that's the gimmick. You know, the plot point is, under the main city, there is literal hell. And nobody does want to go into it, but there is magic there in a way that doesn't exist in the overworld. So if you and so if you want something that is magical, if you want to become immortal, if you want to cure your brother, if you want to slay the elder vampire and cure vampirism throughout the city, you have to go into the underworld to accomplish that. To like give you a sense of like the last quest that we accomplished in my main classic vanilla His Majesty the Worm, during our kind of like to finish our playtest, to give you a sense of what the quests could be. The last quest we did, there, one of my players had formed a relationship with a dryad that was in the first level of the mega dungeon. And the first level used to be this forested level, as trees grew from the lower levels and pushed their way up so that you were amongst the boughs of the trees. And at some point in the game's history, they unleashed a locust swarm that was in like a sarcophagus. And then like over and over, I kept saying like, well, the locust swarm's going around eating everything. And they're like, dang, that sounds bad. Somebody should do something about that. And they'd go do something else. And eventually the entire first level is just denuded, and the locust lich came to rule there. And so her dryad girlfriend, you know, couldn't survive because everything was being destroyed by these locusts, by the locust lich. So her quest was to marry this dryad that she had met. And she defeated the locust lich and got a magic item to carve her girlfriend's tree into the, what do you call the statue that's on in front of a boat? What do you call that again?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Like a bow head or something. I don't even know.
Yeah, I want to say masthead, but that's not right.
I want.
But she carved her girlfriend's tree into her like figurehead, to her pirate ship figurehead, and like retired from adventuring life. Her dryad girlfriend got to come with her to the service, and she became a pirate queen. Like, those are the stories I want to be involved with, right? Like, I think that stuff's neat. I want people to rescue dryad maidens from locust liches.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll take that game. And you said that there's almost a generational aspect to the dungeon. So as you bring new characters in, is it just a series of some stay, some go, and they just learn as they go? How many in the game you've had at home, like not characters, but like different players, have you actually brought in that have like experienced the dungeon?
You know, I played for 7 years, so a lot of players. I have one. My best friend was played with us when we first started. He had his first child. He said, "Hey guys, I have a kid. I can't come to game every week." And I said, "Okay." And then his child grew up old enough that he was like, "All right, I can join game again." Like we played for so long that like I've had people get children, into the world and into the through the toddler stage and start school before like we finish. So yeah, I don't know, 40 players maybe across the table, and like
Wow.
sometimes just for once, somebody would come in and be like, "Hey, this game isn't for me, but congrats." And I was like, yeah, no, great having you. Some people came in and moved away, and I've just had a lot of fun just trying to loop in as many people in my tri-county area into like trying this thing.
It's awesome. That honestly sounds like a dream table to have, is to just this thing. And how in that is the dungeon built? Like it's all done, like it's all there and it's still going? Like did you do it like from the beginning and you're just like, I still have like 300 rooms for you guys, it's just been there forever and they're still trying to get through it? Or
Yeah, yes. I think, like I said, I think the gameplay really shines when there is pre-built content that the players don't know and the GM does know. And I think that sounds intimidating, but actually isn't that hard. Because I think there are procedures. Well, two things. One, I think that you can do what I did and steal other dungeons that you like. There are a lot of creative people out there, and the dungeon that I ran for years was just like 9 of them in a trench coat, right? Like just stacked on top of each other.
Standing on
I
each
think
other's shoulders, yeah.
absolutely. I think you can do that, and I think you should, because my friends put out dungeons that are cool, and I think you should buy them. But two, I think that there's like some procedures and some questions that you can ask, and some random tables that I try to like make to help you to like get you through some things. Like really, it's just like answering the same sort of things like in a discrete way over and over and over, right? And then connecting the pieces together. So I mean, it's not one mega dungeon, it's 5 dungeons that are connected in cool ways, right? There's a teleporter from level 1 to level 2. There's a river of fire from level 2 to level 3. And from level 3 to level 1, there's, a giant with a fishing pole, and he's fishing for something, and you can climb up his, giant fishing line to get back up to the surface. So it's just kind of making interesting stuff and then connecting them all together. And if you kind of go step by step, that's my premise. It's really not that hard. It does take a little upfront work, and I think that work is kind of fun. Like I don't know why my brain is shaped that way, but it doesn't hurt my feelings to spend 2 weeks coming up with 2 levels of a dungeon for my players. So yeah, over the course of the time, they almost never went. There were 6 levels in that dungeon. I don't know that they ever, except for like maybe once by accident, stepped into level 5. And level 6 of that dungeon was hidden. They didn't know it existed. It wasn't on their maps. It was in a hidden door in a random room. And in it dwelt His Majesty the Worm. And His Majesty the Worm controlled the Well of Souls, which controls reincarnation and immortality throughout my entire setting. And they found it. They were like, "Oh my God, this is the center of the maze. I can't believe this exists." They went through it. They got to His Majesty the Worm, was like, "Never mind. It's not that important. I will leave forever again," and like just left. And that I'm perfectly okay with that, because the look on their faces of like, "Hold on, has this been here for 7 years?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is where the guy lives." And they were like, "Oh my God." It was like that was worth it to me, right? Like that was worth the upfront work just for the look on their faces.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
I would have a great time with that. That sounds like a blast.
It was fun.
I think a lot of forever GMs that we all say it with a sigh, but sometimes you're a forever GM because it's also fun. Really figure a way to turn prep into their own solo game, and I think that's what really keeps it continuing to be fun, and seeing what you can get people into, or the way that people are going to interact with the things that you do. It's interesting to me. That's why I'm not a huge fan of a lot of things that are like, let's do like our two minute prep or whatever, or let's make the prep easy. Why do you do so much work? I'm like, because I like the work. I don't understand the question. There's a reason I do it this way. That's because I want to. If I'm struggling to I don't have the story made up for tonight's game, like that's not. That's kind of the antithesis of why I do it. So, Exalted Funeral. This is coming out. It's funded on itch, all the appendixes and everything like that. How did that kind of come to be? Did you reach out to EF? Did EF reach out to you? Like what kind of, whatever you're allowed to say. I know there's contracts and everything like that. What got that ball rolling? Because I know it's not going to Kickstarter. It all funded through itch, like we said before. So what made you want to do it through EF?
Well, like I said, there's a lot of things that I'm doing this for fun, and there's some things that I have no idea how to do. I do not know how to talk to. I do not understand the realities of printing. I've never done it before. I need somebody to help me. I do not have a digital storefront. I was hoping to ride somebody's coattails to glory. So yeah, I reached out to Exalted Funeral with essentially a complete game, and I came to them with like a little book in my hands. I was like, "Do you guys want to help me print this?" And they were kind enough to say yes. So they are going to handle and are handling even today printing and distribution.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Do you have any like Q1 2024? Is that date gonna get like narrower and narrower, and then we'll have an announcement by signing up for your mailing list? Is that what the plan is?
Yeah, I when I have a firmer date, I will let you know. But something I just didn't understand when I was going into this are like really the practical realities of printing. It is difficult. It is time consuming. It is expensive. It is, and like, we're talking about, even with the efficiency of scale, these things are just kind of difficult. So, when I have a crisper idea, when the books are ready in the warehouse and ready to be shipped, I would love to tell you exactly what day is. And if I hazard a guess today, I will be a liar. So
you won.
Q1.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it. We'll see how it goes. Like I said, I mean, I'm very excited for this. I'm really glad that we got to have you on to talk about it. I'm going to continue to keep reading the appendixes. I'm excited for the game to come out. I mean, this is great. Like I said, when me and Hunter were talking about it, I shot him the appendixes, and he was just like, "Oh yeah, though this is really cool." And I'm like, "Yeah, yep, this is the thing that we're going to be doing." And he's like, "Yep, that's the thing that we're going to be doing." So that's great. Speaking of your mailing list, where can people sign up for that? Where can people find the appendixes that we're talking about? Where can people find just any of your stuff so that they can support you, continue to keep making this cool stuff?
Yeah, I'm on Rise Up Comus in most social media. riseupcomus.blogspot.com has a bunch of stuff about this game and other pet projects. riseupcomus.itch.io has the appendices. Most of them are free or almost free. You can sign up to my mailing lists through those methods, and any of the social media. There is Rise Up Comus. If you'd like to chat with me, disabuse me of my hubristic notions, share cool stuff that you're working on, I'd love to chat, love to talk about games.
That's awesome. Definitely go that. Definitely sign up for the mailing list, because I know that I bought Dungeon Seeds and then signed up for the mailing list, and then it sent me Dungeon Seeds, and I was like, damn it. So definitely sign up for the mailing list before you snag the game, so you get one sent to you. But listen, seriously, I know we've said it a bunch and we'll continue to say it. Very excited for this project. It seems fantastic. I can't wait to have this in hand and to give it a good review. Well, to review it, and we'll see what we say.
It. You'll see how you like it.
Yeah,
cool.
And then play it for sure. But genuinely, seriously, really appreciate you coming on, taking the time, from work and everything to be here.
I can't thank you guys enough. This was a blast, and I really appreciate everything. Thank you so much.
Great having you on.
Yeah,
great beer.
And please come back once it comes out and we do the review. If you're willing to run some games, we will absolutely be willing to play it. So we'll have to keep in touch.
Oh no, I'm not lying at all. Let's text right after this, and let's just set up some time. Let's just set up an afternoon.
Cool.
All right, let's do it.
Awesome.
Again, I'm beaming now. This is great. So we are the Weekly Scroll Podcast. This has been Josh with His Majesty the Worm. You can find all of our socials at our link tree, and all of Josh's socials will be in the notes, whether it's on podcast or on YouTube. So once again, thank you for being here, and everyone out there, we will see you another time.